Innovation, it powers our lives, it shapes our future, and it is at the heart of job growth. So moving inventions from the lab to the real world is critical to our economy. But most inventions don't make it. They die in the lab. Consider the light bulb, the universal symbol for innovations. Raise your hand if you know who invented the light bulb. Keep your hand up if you knew it was this person, Thomas Edison. But actually, it wasn't. It was Joseph Swan. He was the first person to create a working light bulb. Edison, however, understood something really critical. Breakthrough innovation isn't the finish line. It is the starting gun. Breakthroughs fail not because of a lack of promise, but because systems designed to scale them are broken. And this is what he tackled. This is what Edison tackled. He made the light bulb scalable, affordable, and essential to everyday life. And this is why history remembers him. The invention itself is just a very small part of the commercialization journey. He realized it takes 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. So what is commercialization? It means to move from invention to adoption, from lab to market, from research to development, and then a giant leap to demonstration and then deployment. This is known as the RD-D&D continuum. So many people think of research as being creative, but deployment is the ultimate creative act. This is where we invent new industries, where we create new partnerships, and we think of new incentives and new business models. True genius isn't imagining the technology, it's reimagining the world in which they have to thrive. But schools actually don't teach us how to reimagine the world, to overcome obstacles to commercialization. So we're teaching students to be swans and not Edisons. We are making them ill-equipped to make the journey to demonstration and deployment. So what do I mean by that? When I got to MIT to become a PhD student, I was trained to choose a technology to dig deep into, and everything is about that technology. In my case, it was block copolymers. I was then told, push the boundaries of science, and your goal is to publish. If you want to graduate, you must publish papers. And if you want to become a professor, you get tenure based on the number of papers that you publish. And then the last thing is to defend your PhD like a fortress under siege. So the result is a study by Nature shows that 97% of academic patents fail to reach the market. Think about that. Only 3% of them see the light of day. The problem is that high GPAs in papers do not teach you how to bring a technology to market. Students focus on homework and tests and not how the real world works. We teach PhD students how to do research, how to get the breakthroughs, the technology breakthroughs. But we don't need a breakthrough in technology, which is R&D. We need a breakthrough in how we adopt technology, how we fund technology, and how we scale it, which is demonstration and deployment. So in essence, we're only teaching half of the pathway to adoption. And we are teaching you to hit a wall after R&D because we have not given you the skills to break through the wall so you're stuck. And in fact, how we measure if something is close to commercialization is absolutely flawed. Let's talk about technology readiness levels, or TRLs. This measures how technically advanced an innovation is, from a basic concept at TRL 1 to a fully operational solution at TRL 9. This is the universal language for communicating whether or not your technology is close to market. Sounds great, right? But here's the problem. It only tells half the story. It focuses on whether technology works, but not whether it will be adopted by the masses. Because it was invented in the 1970s by NASA to launch rockets to the moon. Now, if you're NASA, you don't care how much something costs. You don't care if there's a workforce to actually manufacture these. You don't need a permit to land on the moon yet. However, these are the things that you have to worry about for your innovation to be adopted in the world. So TRLs are insufficient. You need something new to actually help technologies out of the labs and into the world. And so as the Chief Commercialization Officer and the Director of the OTT, and I have to tell you, there are way too many acronyms out there. So here at OTT, we call ourselves the Otters, because we're cute, adorable animals that make tools to help the ecosystem. So channeling our spirit animal, we as the Otters created a new tool for commercialization, something called adoption readiness levels. Adoption readiness levels are supposed to complement TRLs and focus not on if the technology works, but the other risks that we have to tackle to break through the commercialization wall to demonstration and deployment. There are 17 risks that you have to address in 4 key areas. First is value proposition. Does your innovation create enough value for people to switch to it? And can you deliver it at a cost that is affordable? Next is market acceptance. Is there a clear demand for it now? Do people want it? Next is resource maturity. Do you have the capital, the supply chain, the materials, and the workforce to actually scale it? And lastly, license to operate. Can you navigate the regulatory and society hurdles in order to actually bring this technology to market? Innovation without deployment is an absolute tragedy. What's the point in solving the unsolvable in your lab if it never escapes? So if you're an inventor, apply ARLs and don't just ask yourself, does the technology work? Most breakthroughs fail not because of a lack of technical promise, but because the systems are not yet designed and have not been reimagined for it to actually work in the world. So if you think about Thomas Edison, he understood this. He was able to take the light bulb and scale it. He was actually able to manufacture it at a lower cost. He was able to create relationships with utilities so that they would not just deliver gas to homes, but deliver electricity. And he understood the system, which is why history remembers him as the father of the light bulb. So to meet our energy demand and our climate goals, there is a suite of energy technologies we have to bring to market, from virtual power plants to advanced nuclear to geothermal. But how do we address the risks associated with bringing these technologies to market? How do we get them to be commercialized? To figure this out, we have to understand the market. We have to understand the challenges the technology face to disrupt the real world. So here at DOE, the Otters quarterbacked an effort called the Pathways to Commercial Liftoff, where we partnered with the private sector to actually understand for these dozen clean energy technology, what is it going to take to bring it to market? We collaborated with thousands of companies, state and local governments, investors, and communities to understand the adoption barriers to get us to full-scale deployment. The true genius here is being able to work together, hand in hand, to tackle these. And when we did that, we understood what we had to do together. Through this work, we created the first ever national commercialization roadmaps to get the entire ecosystem on the same page of how we're going to get costs down, how we stand up the workforce, how we get the supply chain set up, and how we activate demand. And this plan is now being used to tackle the adoption risks for all the technologies. So let me give you an example. For decades, hydrogen has been touted as the fuel for the future. But in order to get to deployment, there is a very complex ecosystem that has to work together in order to commercialize. In the liftoff work that we were doing, we discovered the following things. Manufacturing costs were too high, we were missing midstream infrastructure, and we had the chicken and the egg. No one actually wanted to buy hydrogen and create an offtake agreement until they knew the supply chain was stood up. No one wanted to stand up a supply chain until they knew they had offtake. So as we design technology, we also must design adoption. And system innovation is as vital as technology innovation itself. So with this insight from the private sector, here at the Department of Energy, we design new programs at DOE to support the private sector to build 7 hydrogen hubs across the nation and to help activate demand. we created the first ever federal government demand-side mechanism to catalyze commercialization. Yes, that is absolutely inspiring. In the federal government, we can disrupt ourselves. And if we can disrupt ourselves to innovate, I know too, so can you. This joint approach to commercialization between the federal government and the private sector is driving tangible results. For every dollar going out of Department of Energy, we are seeing $6 coming from the private sector. In the case of the hydrogen hubs, our $7 billion led to $42 billion being activated in the private sector. We've added 900 new and expanded clean energy facilities, which has led to 400,000 new jobs. And in the last few years, we have deployed the clean energy equivalent of 30 Hoover dams. Yes, astounding. So let me give you another example, offshore wind. In 2022, we only had 2 operational offshore wind farms in the US. The liftoff report found that we had permitting delays, high costs, lack of infrastructure, and major roadblocks that were preventing us from actually commercializing. So to overcome this, we needed multiple projects to coordinate, to mobilize transmission planning and the supply chains. Breakthroughs die in silos, but they thrive in ecosystems. And no single company, government investor can scale to break through. It takes everyone. So Massachusetts and Rhode Island rose to the challenge. They collaborated to approve 3 major projects. They designed a local supply chain. They added 3 gigawatts, which is a large part of the 10 to 15 gigawatts that we need to scale offshore wind to get to liftoff. The future belongs to those who are master collaborators across sectors, across borders, across ideologies, including political ones. That is the only way that technologies like offshore wind will deploy. And it is never too early to think about adoption. We recently released our Fusion Strategy Report, which identified 11 key adoption risks the community has to address to deploy fusion. If you work only on TRLs, you can't move beyond R&D, and it's going to remain a scientific curiosity. In order to get to demonstration and deployment, you have to work on adoption risks at the same time. Because commercialization is not just R&D, it is not just TRLs, you have to leap to demonstration and deployment. So inventors, solving technical problems is not enough. And that is what the undergraduate and graduate degrees train you to do. You need a mindset shift from GPAs, mastery, and perfection to humility, scrappiness, and trial and error. You have to move from an individual journey in the lab to creating relationships to influence really complicated ecosystems. And unfortunately, we don't teach this in our current STEM education. And this is why our students have a build it and they will come mindset. We haven't given them the skills to move from a dream to reality. And innovation without deployment is not what's going to save the world. But don't panic. The good news is that ARLs can change your trajectory. It's not hard. It literally takes 1 hour to learn the language. And unlike TRLs, they are not rocket science. They are common sense. At our 17 national labs at DOE, many of which have technology that would make Tony Stark drool, we are training our PhD researchers on ARLs. We are increasing the odds that they can commercialize their technologies. ARLs are so fundamental to commercialization, they have gotten a life of their own. And this language created by your friendly neighborhood otters is now being adopted even beyond DOE. The National Science Foundation is requiring ARL assessments for their regional innovation engines, which are catalyzing commercialization across our nation. Innovation accelerators like Activate and Bright Energy, as well as venture capitalists like B Capital and Breakthrough Energy, are training startup leaders on ARLs to accelerate the path to market. Even the insurance industry, through Geneva Association, and clean energy developers like Mark I are using ARLs to guide their commercialization approach. Hopefully at some point, ARLs will be an integral part to any science and engineering degree, because the future doesn't belong to the best technology, it belongs to technology that can reach everyone. Imagine the most life-changing technology you use every day. Now imagine if it never escaped the lab. Invention is not the hard part, deployment is. This is where the future is won or lost. And until we reform the education system, you're going to have to learn this on your own. Learn the language of commercialization that we've codified for you through ARLs. Then, equipped with that language, do the following. Leave the classroom and lab and observe problems people face in the real world. If you're focused on synthesizing new additives for paint, paint your house. See what problems you had when you're trying to paint and use that to guide your research. If you're an entrepreneur, cold call people to understand the adoption risks to your technology. And the most important thing is when someone challenges you about your baby, your technology, your thesis, do not be defensive. The PhD mindset will prevent you from understanding the issues. If you're getting a PhD, expand your thesis. Have a chapter dedicated to explore the market, regulatory, and societal barriers that your technology might face. How will your 5 years of work help to change the world? And if you're an undergrad, take the minimum number of classes to get your degree. More classes will not increase your success in life. Use that extra time to build real-world skills. The best commercialization giants actually dropped out of school. To be clear, I'm not telling you to do that. But you don't need school to reimagine the world for adoption. And if you're a university, change the tenure process so it's not just based on publications, but on real-world impact. Professors are teaching the next generation. So finally, walls of labs are not unbreakable. To dismantle them, you have to step beyond invention, beyond mastery, and into the messy, beautiful, chaotic world. It's there in collaboration with unlikely allies, in the humble work of building ecosystems that breakthroughs don't just survive, they thrive. And this is the only way to ensure that your unique innovation, your baby, is adopted by the masses to light up the world and solve humanity's greatest challenges. So let us, like Edison, imagine not better ideas, but better futures, and reimagine the world and its systems to make it real. Thank you.